This is the news and talk of Nevada.
That's the trouble around here. Talk, talk, talk.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Now, the Dan Mason Show on News Talk 78, KOH, and KKOH.com.
Time for another exciting Tech Tuesday segment. We welcome Bill Sikkens in from WeAreTechnology.com. How you been?
It's great to be back. Been wonderful. Busy.
As always. And boy, we got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. I almost don't know where to begin.
There is a lot going on right now.
Let's talk about gaming. Because the E3... I don't know, what do you call it? Is it a convention, a conference? The consumer electronics of gaming.
Consumer electronics, right? Or Comic-Con of gaming, yeah.
There's lots of new stuff going on. And now apparently not only Netflix is getting into original content, now we have original content for PlayStation and your gaming console.
Yeah, it's interesting. The console wars are heating up, and that was the big thing at E3.
So we call it console
wars. Yeah, I don't know if I just coined that term or not, but
I like it. So that's good.
But with this year we have new products from Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo's trying to hang in there with their Wii U. So, like we're seeing with a lot of the Netflix and online service providers, we're starting to see original content that's being targeted at the different consoles. The idea being that if you want to watch their show, you need to buy the PlayStation to do it.
Right.
And, as far as all that goes, they've been doing that for a while with the franchises on the games like Halo for the Xbox and that type of thing.
A lot of money there.
A ton of money. Yeah. So why not get into content too?
And I guess it's not new. PlayStation is just getting into it, but Xbox has kind of been doing some things in that direction for a while now, right?
They've been playing with it for about 2 years now, and the Xbox One is a platform that seems to be, we've talked about it here before, and more as they come out with the features for it and it kind of gets its hold, we're seeing that it's actually something that's designed to be more than just a video game. It replaces your TiVo or your cable set-top box, and they are feeding content to it as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Halo, and that's one of the things. It's called Xbox Originals, and apparently they have about a dozen television shows or documentaries, short videos kind of in plans, but they want to turn Halo from beyond the video game franchise now into kind of a series, and Steven Spielberg apparently is involved.
Yeah, they've got some big names behind this, and this is not something to be taken lightly. The idea of franchises has been a big deal. It's actually what's kept Nintendo as a viable product for the last couple of years. And to look at some of these things and be able to say, okay, this is the game I want to play, this is the format, and now all of a sudden, as you say, we're going to have essentially a TV series based on it, people will really go for that.
You know, the good old days when all you needed to entertain yourself was a deck of cards and a solitaire game. That's kind of over, huh?
Yeah, I tell you, saw a posting on Facebook. Do you remember when your television only had 13 channels? Boy, have things changed.
Do I have to answer that question?
No.
Yeah, but games, of various kinds, are everywhere. You mentioned Facebook. There are people that are doing games on Facebook all the time. I'm getting invitations every day from Facebook friends, to play this game or that game. And my first response is always, really? How do you find time to do that?
Yeah, it's something that I kind of had my own little thing with that for a while and got out of it when I was realizing how much time was really going into this per day to go on and, farm the virtual reality scenario there. And there's a lot of these things out there. The one thing about it is, and this has been a big thing, it was a concept at E3 and it's been a discussion, is the idea of console games versus games like on Facebook or that you can download to your phone.
Right.
And the latter market is actually becoming very viable. It's over $100 million now and growing. So the idea of a game on Facebook a few years ago was like, okay, that's kind of nice. Now it's a real thing.
Well, and you don't need a console.
No, you just need what you have. Yeah.
Now, is that a concern for the console makers? Is the day going to come when the whole concept of consoles kind of, like a lot of things, becomes obsolete and we move on to other things? And that's the thing about a lot of this, as you know from being in the business. As fast as you figure something out, somebody comes along with another new idea, and before you know it, this is old, forget about it, we're doing this way now.
Right, and that's one of the things that there was actually a press conference held on this topic at E3. One of the things about it is right now today, the quality of a game that you can get on a console greatly exceeds one that you can get over the internet.
Okay.
Just due to space concerns and the ability to deliver it and that type of thing, but that is changing. And one of the big things that's taking a hit right now is the portable units. Sony just announced they're going to end theirs.
Okay.
And Nintendo's...
my daughter's going to be mad now.
Yeah, they're...
The portable one gets a lot of play.
and they do. And I've used these too. The DS3, which is
that's the one.
Big one on the market now, and it's dual screen, so it does a little more than your phone can do. And looking at the games on it, it's designed specifically for that. But you can see the direction that this is going. And I think once they get a delivery system in place, you will see some good competition from these other areas.
Yeah, she won't go in the car with me if she can't bring the DS3 along, because I'm boring apparently. So, well, what you were saying too is like if you think back to streaming video, television shows, whatever it may be. At the very beginning, it was like, oh, this isn't going to be a threat because the quality just isn't there. Buffering and streaming, this and that, the other thing. Not now. You can go on the internet, and if you got the right equipment, you got a good computer or whatever it might be, or your tablet or anything, you can watch whatever you want now, and the quality is pretty darn good. And if I'm a cable provider, I'm thinking I might be a little concerned for the future.
Well, we're over 50% of people that used to pay for access through cable and satellite and those type of things are getting their content today through the internet. And it is an interesting situation because another thing was said about this about 20 years ago we're never going to see a problem with music downloads. Everybody will always buy CDs. And
right.
I'm not even sure if there are CD or record stores around anymore. And if there are, it's not mainstream.
I got a bunch of them at home, and I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, what do I do with them? Which is what happened with, my video cassettes.
Exactly. And that's, again, to see these changes in content. What happens today, you want music, you go online and you buy it. And the record industry has adopted that now and is doing fine. Same thing is happening with, when was the last time you were in a Blockbuster or a video rental store like that?
Do we still have them?
I think the chain might still. I honestly.
But there was one up the street. Yeah, I think it's there anymore.
Yeah,
but you're right.
And they're going away. If they're not gone, they're going away.
No fault of their own. It's just things change.
Change in technology.
That's kind of that.
And when you think about it, $4 or $5 to rent a DVD. If you really still want the physical disc, you can go to Redbox and some of these other things. But your Netflix, your Hulu, Amazon Prime, and a number of other competitors, and now the consoles are getting into it. So, like music, I can see where this has really changed. So, cable provider, which is $120 a month or more, or I pay $9 a month for Netflix. Well, I mean, that's not a difficult decision to make.
I think that's probably the biggest thing is technology throughout whenever you were born and where your life is. Technology has always changed. Now it just seems like it's changing so much faster.
Yeah, and we're seeing an acceleration of this across the board. In fact, Intel just published a book on their founding that came out last week, and it's a very interesting read, and it talks about some of this. One of them known as what's called Moore's Law. Dr. Moore gave the idea that every 2 years, computing power would duplicate exponentially in strength.
Okay.
And that's something that's held to be true, but we're seeing it's faster and faster because 2 times today is a big difference than 2 times 20 years ago.
Bill Sikkens, wearetechnology.com. He's our guest on Tech Tuesday. I saw this today, and my first reaction was, what are you talking about? Tesla, which is very much on the minds of many of us here in Nevada, especially northern Nevada, as we compete with Texas and supposedly other states, but I think realistically it's down to us in Texas for that battery factory that could employ as many as 6,500 people. And the ancillary benefits of that could double those numbers in a variety of other ways. But I see that he's going to make the company's patents available to other companies. They won't sue competitors who violate patents, quote, in good faith. Now, I'm not violate and in good faith in the same sentence. I'm a little bit weird about that. But what's his thinking here? Does this make sense to you?
Well, it's an interesting thing. And when I first saw this, I'm thinking the same thing you are. It's like, what are they doing? But then if you think about it, this was done a few years ago, and it's been pretty successful by Google with the Android platform.
Okay.
They made it, they gave it away, and everybody uses it.
Now it's everywhere.
Yeah. So, I think it's a two-sided coin. The idea behind this is if they come up with the technology and it becomes a standard, then their technology's out there and used by everybody. And one footnote on this, it isn't all their patents. They're,
right. We're talking about they see this as a way, and it goes into what you just said, as enhancing the electric vehicle market as a whole.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things that's really the driving force behind this is right now, if you get an electric car, and you drive around town, that's great. You plug it in at night. But if you want to go on a trip or something, it's still somewhat sketchy on if you can recharge it and where do you go and all of that.
And do you have the time to do it?
Do you have the time to do it? And, what happens if you stop and there's nothing around? So one of the things that this will do is it will cause the other car manufacturers, at least they hope it will, to put in electric charging stations that are compatible with the Tesla standard.
Okay.
And right now they have a technology out there that will recharge about half the battery in 30 minutes. So if you start seeing this more, it becomes much more
that's an improvement
viable.
Already. Because I was just going to say, if you want to go on a vacation, you're going to drive several hundred miles. Maybe you're going to Yellowstone, or somewhere where it's not a 3 or 4 or 5 hour drive. It's like, okay, I hope you enjoyed the trip today. We got to plug in for 8 hours before we can go anywhere else.
And that is exactly what the problem's been. That's part of the reason what drove the idea of a hybrid vehicle was that you had the backup of a regular old-fashioned gasoline engine.
Yeah.
And a totally electric car, okay, so right now you would drop about $100,000 to buy the car, and then you can't recharge it, so you've got a limit to how far you can go. And I think that's a big part of what they're looking at here is, well, if everybody supports our standard, they'll do this, and now all of a sudden our car will be able to be used in all of these other places. So there's more to this than just being, here's a gift of our patent portfolio,
Yeah, I think they call that the supercharger network.
Yes.
Is what they're basically referring to. And that's really the key, I think, for electric vehicles down the road. If you're just driving to and from work, maybe a dozen miles a day, then you never need gas.
Yeah, and that makes it very easy. But, if you want to, like you say, go on vacation or if something come up where you do need to go and all of a sudden you go over 300 miles and that's it for the day and there's no way to really counter that, that is something that would really hold back the technology. And this is something that could really push that ahead, I think.
But there are certain things, as you mentioned, that they're not letting everything loose. They refer to it as the secret sauce.
Yes, the secret sauce.
In the batteries.
And the batteries is one thing. And like you were saying earlier, we're in competition with Texas. I am pretty sure that that's the only 2 states that are left in the running right now for the battery plant. And I think we have a very good shot at getting it here. But all of that is not included in what you can use for free patent portfolio.
It's like Kentucky Fried Chicken. You can go ahead and make chicken, but if you ain't got the 7 herbs and spices, it ain't quite the same.
Yeah, and it makes it still a very unique, a unique offering that they can have. So we'll see what happens. I think it's a good idea.
Fingers crossed on the battery factory. Although Reno Mayor Bob Cashel was on an interview on one of the cable channels the other day, when Rick Perry from Texas was in California, pitching them for the Tesla factory. And Bob basically came out and said, listen, sorry, Rick, but you're going to lose.
Well, there we are. I'm glad that's been determined. So
I always go along with what Bob says. You do a lot of work with Google in the aspects of your company, wearetechnology.com. You work on a lot of apps and this, but you've been involved a pretty good portion of the way with Google Glass. And the consumer aspects of Google Glass have been, let's say slower than they had hoped. They were going to have the big launch last year. Everybody was going to go buy it for Christmas, and then it got delayed. And I don't even know where it's at now. They're not giving up on the consumer angle, but they've begun to recognize that it's slower than they anticipated. So they're really turning their focus, it looks like now, to business applications for Google Glass, and apparently there's a ton of them out there that people are coming up with.
It's actually very interesting, and the fact that they've kind of made this statement officially now makes a lot of sense, because what we've been seeing as far as development's concerned, I would say that pretty much 90% of what we've been doing has been business-related apps. And one of the things that are coming down, and this is just an example of one of the many things we're working on, is a app that is HIPAA compliant. What HIPAA is it's a set of standards and technology for healthcare record keeping.
Right.
And basically what they want to do is be able to use the Google Glass and other wearables for the purpose of being able to augment and get real-time data from a accident location or that type of thing and be able to send it on to the doctor in a much faster fashion. But in order to do that, it's all electronic records, so a big part of what we're involved in is building that. And that's just one example of a number of very innovative business things that are coming out for it. And I kind of see where they're going with it, because one of the problems with this, and it's the same thing Microsoft is experiencing with their mobile platform, is you can have something that's great, and I know that's a subjective definition, but you can have something that's great, but if you don't have any apps or third-party support for it, it's not going to go anywhere. So you end up in a situation with this kind of a thing where the more apps that they can build and the more things that it can do before they go to a consumer release, the better. So giving up on the market, no. As you very charitably put it, we're now 6 months behind and, continuing on with that. And they're talking now that they may have a consumer release for Christmas this year, but we'll see what happens.
Well, there's a lot of people that want to, turn it in some sort of a panic attack, but really it's not that unusual what's going on when you were talking about new technology, new applications. How do you put it out there for consumers to use? There's a lot of trial and error.
And getting something out there too fast can actually mess up the launch of it, and I think Google learned that with.
I think that's what happened last year.
Yeah, and they had another device called Chromecast, which was going to be a competitor to smart TV and that type of thing. And when it came out last year, there were only, I think, 9 apps available for it. So people bought it, but then they're like, well, what can we do with this thing? And having a good library when Glass launches, and I still think it's a win, not an if. Is going to, I think, really make it a lot better. The other thing that they need to look at, too, is the consumer price point, because $1,500 has priced a lot of people out of the market for it.
Yeah, well, that's part of the trial and error, and we'll see what happens. Bill Sikkens here. We are technology.com. It's Tech Tuesday, and we're talking about Google. And speaking of, they've got this fairly ambitious plan for a bunch of internet satellites. We'll tell you what that's all about next. Bill Sikkens here. It's Tech Tuesday. He's from wearetechnology.com. So what's up with Google and these? They're going to spend as much as $3 billion on what I guess mini internet satellites, because Lord knows we don't have enough satellites orbiting Earth. So we need some more.
Definitely need some more. Now,
look out.
So, it's interesting to see the satellite internet is nothing new. It's been around for a long time now, but It's also been very problematic. There's something called lag that has kind of kept it back, so it's only really been used in rural areas and that type of thing. And, as the market has changed and our providers have become more and more available, even if you're a little bit out of town, satellite seems to have been something that has taken a back seat to that. And now we're looking at the amount of money that they're putting into it, so they're being serious about it. Yeah. And what it is they're basically putting together a new satellite system that's a lower orbit that gets rid of the problem with the lag. Okay. Now, why this is a big deal to everybody is because right now, even if you're in a large community, you usually have 2 options for high-speed internet, and that's going to be your cable company or your phone company.
Right. Yeah.
So if that doesn't work for what you need, you've got a problem. Well, this is like when we got the satellite TV providers and they were competing with cable. I think that's what we're going to see here, that all of a sudden there's going to be a third choice.
Okay.
And competition is good. It helps to improve what we have and push the cost down. But the other side of it is like products like Google Earth and some of these other things that they do, all of a sudden you'll be able to get high-speed internet wherever you are. So
is that the other half of what the problem has been for satellite internet in rural areas? You talk about this lag, but the speeds have not been quite as good sometimes too, right?
Yeah, and the numbers is about a quarter of the world's population's online, and for the most part, those that aren't because they don't have access to the internet for whatever reason.
Yeah,
and that's a big part, I think, of what this is going to also help out with. Because what we're going to have is all of a sudden a scenario that, like now you can get television anywhere. Well, you can get high-speed internet anywhere. And that will make a huge difference and an impact on how all of that works.
Google, in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, said 2/3 of the world has no internet access at all. So you want to talk about a growth area.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
potential there is enormous. And they say that this could, if they get all of this to the point where they want it to be, and they're going to spend as much as, $3 billion perhaps? If they can get this where they want it to be, they're talking about potentially 4 billion new customers for internet service.
And when you're talking those numbers, the $3 billion investment to do it is nothing.
They'll make that drop in the bucket. Yeah, they'll make that up in a heartbeat. So how far away are they? I mean, this is something they've been talking about for a while. Now they're getting to a point where they're starting to put the funds into it and figuring out how to get all these satellites up into orbit. As many as 180 of them, apparently.
Yeah,
right?
it's the numbers about that, and they've been actually testing the idea of airborne internet access with a thing called the Google Balloon, which has been out for the last, I think, about 2 years.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
And the idea is you have a special event with a lot of people that's not in an area where there's internet. You can light it up wirelessly using the hot air balloon. And the network that runs that and what they're doing with the satellites, there are similarities between the two, almost to the point, and even though this isn't an official Google statement, but it seems like one is a predecessor to testing out the idea of the other.
Right.
Because the way from point A to point B is similar. So, from that standpoint, like you say, it's 2/3 of the world population that all of a sudden will have access that don't now. 4 billion people. That's a lot of potential subscribers.
Yeah, just a few. And, part of the reason they have the ability to move forward faster on this is due to these private companies like SpaceX and others. The cost of putting satellites up there is coming down significantly.
It's like anything with technology. As time goes by, it's cheaper, it's faster, there's better ways to do it, and that is exactly this. The idea of putting up 180 satellites even 10 years ago, even for a company like Google, would have been cost prohibitive.
Very much so.
So you're seeing that change, so it makes it much more accessible now.
The battle, complaints, issues between Netflix and internet providers regarding broadband service. The FCC is looking into, we've been hearing about this for a while, about the business impacts. Netflix wanting, to get more of their stuff out there, but they're competing with the satellite and the cable companies, so they're controlling the speed of delivery, which has been an issue, and the FCC has been looking at it. But now they're kind of turning their attention to the consumer end, which hasn't been getting much notice so far. Are they concerned that consumers are being impacted by this little to-do as well?
Well, it's interesting to look at what actually has been going on there. The short answer to that is yes, definitely. And what happened is both ends of this haven't been playing terribly nice. And
no, really?
No, I mean, imagine that. But you actually had a situation where about 2 weeks ago on Verizon, Netflix was sending a message to the Verizon subscribers that if your video doesn't play right, call your cable provider because it's their fault.
Okay, there you go.
And obviously Verizon acted a little bit negatively to that.
I'm sure they did, yeah.
So they've been going back and forth. And what the FCC seems to be getting into now is what is really causing these problems. And how come all of a sudden when Netflix has paid a couple of these cable providers, as much as it may seem magically, the signal improved. And
they've been doing that. They've been paying some money to get the guaranteed faster
delivery,
connection speeds, right?
Yeah. And what it really comes down to on the technical side of it is it's a matter of changing a few connection points at the data center to make it work or not make it work, and that's what they're paying for is that access. So at the end of the day, the question becomes who does this affect? Well, it affects anybody that uses web-based video.
Well, and that's the FCC stated concern is, okay, while all of this is going on with Netflix and Hulu and others and the internet providers, are the consumers kind of by osmosis getting the shaft as well? And that's what they're concerned about because it shouldn't have any effect on consumers who are paying for the speed you're supposed to get.
Exactly. If you're paying for it and the company that's delivering your internet is incapable of delivering a specific kind of media or a specific kind of content, that's problematic, and there's probably more to it than just the network. You know?
And if it lasts too long, you're just going to go start looking for somebody else.
Exactly.
And so there's a fine line here that they're all kind of treading at the moment. Okay, real quick before we wrap things up today. Hacking is still a major issue out there. There haven't been any terrible new things in the last couple of weeks, but they're still out there. And according to Reuters, Domino's Pizza in Belgium and France got nailed, and American Express and eBay as well recently.
Yeah, we're seeing this kind of ongoing, and the thing of it is these big network providers, there's specific things that you have to do for security. And the one problem with it is as long as you're on the internet, it's like the lock on the front door. You can make it bigger, you can make it better, but somebody somewhere might be able to get through.
They're certainly going to try.
They're certainly going to try.
Right.
And you figure, for example, eBay. Now, fortunately, it sounds like didn't get into financial data.
Right.
They got into the employee database, so they were able to access the users.
And this was several weeks ago,
right.
Apparently. But, yeah, they got addresses, phone numbers, emails, stuff like that, but none of the really
the financial data.
Yeah.
But you still don't want your name, address, and phone number to be in the hands of the bad guys. It's just keep the information private. And then when you look at a company like American Express, that's a little bit bigger deal because that's financial data.
Mm-hmm.
And the issues with this type of thing, I think data security are continuing to be a big deal. we're going to see that continuing to be an area that we just need to be vigilant. And it's all about knowing and taking care of things and making sure that as a consumer, we can all do certain things to protect our information. When these big hacks happen, we work to eliminate that as well. But it is part of what they call the new frontier. Yeah,
I mean, the reality is if you're doing anything at all on the Internet in this day and age, you have to be vigilant and you got to check often. Yeah. You can't take anything for granted. And if, I know you do and I do, I've got so many passwords, I don't know how to keep track of them anymore.
Yeah, and that's the other side of the coin.
I need the photographic memory thing. We got to figure out how to do, maybe an implant, an implant with all my passwords.
Well, when we're talking technology 6 months from now, maybe such a thing will exist.
It'll probably happen faster than we think, right? Bill Sikkens from wearetechnology.com with another Tech Tuesday update. Great to see you again.
As always, thank